Are you looking for some safe bets to make on the Detroit Lions this upcoming season? Well, stay tuned because I got a special guest for this video to give you guys some helpful tips so that you at least have a better chance of making money versus losing money on the Lions this upcoming season. Stay tuned. What's going on YouTube? Miko here with Pride Detroit. And as you can see, I'm joined by a very special guest. Ryan Matthews, senior editor over at Pride Detroit, is here with me. What's up, Ryan? How are you?
What's up, Miko? Resident gambling. I wouldn't say expert. I don't want to throw that out there, but just resident gambler, I guess, is my other title for this one.
I think we'll keep it to that because I feel like if we throw out expert and we give bad advice, people are going to come back very angry in the chat. So we'll keep it to resident gambler. But no, as you guys saw from the title, as you guys have probably seen with the thumbnail and obviously the intro, we're here in today's video to kind of just take a wider look at the Lions in terms of, when it comes to betting. And obviously when it comes to Lions and gambling, it's a rocky relationship right now. But we got to accept the fact that when it comes to the NFL, sports betting is just one of the biggest things that's kind of going on right now. So with that in mind, Ryan, I think it's a good idea to at least try to help out, Lions fans and at least try to give them an opportunity to make smart bets and hopefully make some money, throughout the course of the season.
Sure. That's the most important thing too, right? Be smart. Responsibly gambling is the number one key to all of this. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we can give you some good numbers and some good hits to make a little bit of coin off of watching your Detroit Lions.
Absolutely. And just for full disclosure to you guys, Ryan is the resident gambler. I am the novice. So if you're in the same boat as me, like you don't normally gamble on sports, this could still be a really good tool for you just to kind of get your feet wet and understanding overs, unders, and just again, understanding how to bet, in a really smart way. So Ryan, without further ado, let's jump into like the first question that I kind of have here. Currently the Lions over under for wins in 2023 is 9.5. From your perspective, like how should fans kind of approach that line?
Yeah, it's a good line, right? I think you look at last year and the Lions won 9 games. You're expecting them to obviously improve and win more football games. I think there's also a lot of talk about the Lions, being the NFC North favorites, right? And we'll get to that in a second. But the 9.5 number at minus 120 odds, not super tantalizing, right? Because you do have to spend a little bit more money than you are going to get in return. I actually prefer taking the Lions at over 10.5 wins. And the reason why is you'll get it at plus 155 on DraftKings. All of our odds are obviously on DraftKings because we're tight affiliates over there at SB Nation. But if you put $10 on a bet of the Lions over 10.5 wins, you're going to get back 1550 in winnings. So that's kind of like how the math works with that. And I just see it, Miko, and I'll get your kind of 2 cents on the Lions here. If the Lions are going to be division winners, 10 wins seems like it might get it done in the NFC North, but it seems like the Lions might have a really good shot at winning 11 games. So I think it's worth kind of getting an adjusted total here and taking the over at 10.5.
No, I agree. We just had like our season prediction article kind of released today. And I think for the most part, everyone on staff had the Lions over 10 wins. I personally had them at 11. And I think that is a safe bet. Again, you're talking about, first and foremost, improving from where you were a season ago. So going from 9 wins to 11, I think is a real reasonable jump for this team. But also, I agree with you. If we're talking about this team being division winners, yeah, I think it's going to take 11, maybe even 12 if for some reason, a team like the Vikings or the Packers are able to string together some wins that we weren't necessarily expecting. You would definitely think that this Lions team is going to need, that 11. So I like that. I like the idea of, again, not just taking the 9.5, but going to the 10.5 just to be able to get a little more bang for your buck in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. And to kick it to the NFC North and the Lions and their odds to win that. I think the last time I checked, Miko, you had the same odds here that I have on my phone, plus 140 to win the NFC North.
Yep.
This is kind of my preferred bet to even the one we just threw out there. If you're not interested in the win total, if you think that, our 11 wins might be a little bit too spicy for me. I mean, we just said that that's at plus 155. You want to get the Lions to win the division at plus 140. Well, then it doesn't matter if they only win 9 games and they win the division, or if they only win 10 games and they win the division. This bet still cashes. So I think if you're going to go a direction, I like
Hmm.
the Lions winning the NFC North at plus 140 as maybe my favorite like team bet for the Lions as a whole.
Yeah, so in your mind, like that's in your opinion, then that's like a no-brainer, right? That should be like almost like an easy layup type of bet to make for fans.
Yeah, it seems like a bet that you can make in real good confidence, as opposed to, all right, maybe the Lions have 10 wins and they have the division wrapped up, and it's week 18. They're resting all their starters, and all of a sudden now you're at the whim of Teddy Bridgewater, or maybe even of Hendon Hooker's, getting his first NFL start. Now you're relying on the backups to maybe
Sure.
help you cash that over. So why not just be it feels like a much safer bet, Nico.
Okay, so here comes like my novice question, and this isn't really in the notes, but because again, we're talking about these two different types of bets, which almost in a way seem like they're linked, right? As far as win total and then winning the division. From your experience, is there a way that you would like stack these where like I'm gonna put a little bit of money on like maybe the win total, but I'm gonna put a little bit more on them winning the division, or would you do it a different way? Like again, from a novice's perspective, how would you recommend I go approach those two types of bets?
Yeah, I think when it comes to team bets, you want to try to look for where the value is to maybe hedge further down the line. And what I mean
Okay.
by that is maybe you feel real confident about the Lions as I don't want to get too deep into it, but just as an example, Miko, if you want to say, hey, I want to take the Lions to win the NFC, right? They're
Hmm.
going to be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl. Okay, well, I don't have the odds in front of me, but if those odds are plus 900 for the Lions to win the NFC, well, if you get it now at plus 900 versus when they're in the playoffs and maybe they win a couple games and they're going into that NFC championship game, well, now you have a bet that you placed at plus 900 for the Lions to win that football game that they're playing that night. And you're not going to get those odds anywhere else, right? So you can kind of hedge by whatever team they're playing in the NFC championship game, whether it's the 49ers or the Eagles or some other team. You can lay some money there and you're guaranteeing yourself to win a little bit of money, right? Because you have such a
Sure.
long odds bet on the Lions to win the NFC, versus putting money on maybe the 49ers if they're minus 150 favorites or something like that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you kind of use that example because the next question I kind of have is actually built around the postseason. So currently the Lions have minus 165 odds of making the playoffs, but they only have the fourth best odds of winning the conference and then like the ninth best odds of winning the Super Bowl. If you're in the driver's seat and you're either making these bets yourself or helping me out in terms of making these bets, where would you want me to put my money in regards to those three types of lines?
Yeah, minus 165 to make the playoffs. I mean, those are maybe your safest odds, I can say,
Okay.
right? I guess the old adage in gambling is always, safe money don't make none, right?
Sure.
Um, but the idea there with the minus 165 bet to make the playoffs is you insulate yourself a bit, right? It doesn't have to be a division win that gets them into the playoffs. It can be, maybe the NFC East has some problems and they're not sending 3 teams to the playoffs this year. And if that happens, it's kind of like a worst case scenario. But man, Miko, we've talked all off season long about how the Lions are just primed and ready to win this NFC North. And Brad Holmes has talked about, yeah, these are kind of the expectations for our football team, and this is the track that we're heading on. I think you fly down that track with them rather than trying to play the safe and cute route, but then you're not winning as much money in the end either.
Sure. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it because I think like you kind of laid out a little bit earlier, when it comes down to even winning the conference or making it to the Super Bowl, while again as fans a lot of us have that feeling that like, no, the Lions can make a serious push, but it's a different thing when you're talking about putting money behind it. And like you were saying kind of at the beginning of the show, like being smart and making sure that you can gamble, like you're gambling with what you can actually like afford to lose in that sense. Um, and so yes, there is that adage of like, scared money don't make money. But when we're talking about like, again, being smart, taking the for sure things, and then, waiting to see down the line maybe, and probably placing those bets a little bit later.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
All right. So with that said, we talked about, win totals, we talked about the division, we talked about the postseason. Obviously, you can go around, you can also place bets on like team stats or just, outcomes of or yeah, team stats and just various outcomes for the season. Is there anything that you personally like would recommend people put bets on or just kind of stay away from, whether it's, you know, passing yards, touchdowns, whatever the case may be? Um, is there anything that you personally, would recommend in that light?
I feel like there's so much goodwill being pushed behind this Dan Campbell for coach of the year that
Mhm.
I feel like the market has it's kind of pushed me away from wanting to make that bet because right now Dan Campbell's at plus 850, which again, some pretty long odds, but I think it's too close. It feels like it needs to be a little bit longer for me because right behind him you have Sean Payton at plus 900. I think it might be kind of hard to maybe make an argument if Sean Payton can turn things around with Russell Wilson in Denver. That's pretty high profile, right? And
Yeah,
I feel like some of these awards where they're voted on, that honestly it comes into play, right? Like it's not just like okay, it's based on how many wins you had last year versus how many wins you have this year, and there's no formula that goes into it. It's people choosing the award winner. So I think that there's too much. I mean, Robert Sala is plus 1600. I think I'd rather put money where it's almost double the odds on Sala, who
sure.
I mean, it's the Jets. They're on hard knocks. They have Aaron Rodgers. If they find a way to maybe even win the AFC East, it doesn't matter what Dan Campbell does, because these awards are voted on even before the season's over, or even before
Sure.
the postseason's over. Sorry, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's one of those bets that maybe a lot of Lions fans are like, oh man, plus 850, those are great odds. I would kind of maybe temper expectations a little bit and maybe hit the brakes on that, just because I think there are some other bets that you can make on Lions players that I think a little bit more worth your money and worth your time.
That's actually a really good call though with the Dan Campbell one because I agree with you. I think there's a lot of people that would see that and be like, "Oh, I want to be able to make, like you said, like that seems like a good odds." And we're talking about this team winning the division. We're talking about this team making it to the playoffs. Oh, that should line up Dan Campbell to win Coach of the Year. And then we kind of forget though that this award typically also goes to the coach though that coached the team with the best record. So, like to your point, if that's Sean Payton with the Broncos or again, if the Eagles do it again, or just there's so many other factors that go into it, I think the Lions and Dan Campbell would have a good shot at it, especially if they do the things that we just talked about. But again, there's so many other variables that go into that where it's like the Lions could have a great season, but does that necessarily translate over to a big award for Dan Campbell? And I agree with you. I don't know if that's something I would be willing to put too much money on.
Yeah, there's one last little bit of knowledge that I can share with you, and it's from experience. So I bet on Mike Vrabel to be the coach of the year pretty late in the season in 2021. He won it that year. And the
Mhm.
reason why I took Mike Vrabel, and if you remember the 2021 season, it was the year that the Titans had so many injuries, absolutely ravaged by injuries, but still won the AFC South, right?
Yeah.
And they still had a home playoff game. Like it was great, and then they got dummied in the
Yeah.
playoffs. But none of that matters, right? Just because it's what you did in the preseason or what you did in the regular season. So, um, you know, Dan Campbell could win 10 games, take the Lions to the Super Bowl, but maybe Robert Sala, who wins 12 games with the Jets, ends up winning Coach of the Year.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay, so you teased this a little bit ago as far as like, there being some player focused bets that you would actually be a little more inclined to put, money on versus, something that's more team based or even something like, coach of the year. Uh can you give me three player focused bets that you would probably, contend with or consider or even offer as a suggestion for our audience?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. My favorite one is Jameer Gibbs at plus 1,000 to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. Right now, he's situated behind a few guys. Bijan Robinson is plus 275. There's a lot of money on Bijan.
Sure.
Obviously, high profile player, first running back that gets picked in the draft. One of the few guys I know a lot of Lions fans were like, hey, I would be fine if the Lions drafted him in the first round. And then lo and behold, you end up with Jameer Gibbs. But I think a lot of people obviously have a lot of goodwill and they have a lot of expectations for Jameer in his rookie season too. But there's just some other players that are ahead of him that are head scratchers, like Bryce Young at plus 500, Anthony Richardson at plus 600, CJ Stroud at plus 850. Those numbers are kind of reflections of the market moving those lines because they are quarterbacks. They were quarterbacks that were
Sure.
drafted high. Again, these are awards that people vote on. So it's not necessarily a formula that kicks out this guy should be the rookie of the year. It's a lot of narrative stuff. You know, if Bryce Young ends up pushing the Carolina Panthers to the playoffs, okay, well then maybe he has a case, right? But
Yeah.
it seems like that might be a long shot. It seems like it might be a real long shot that CJ Stroud leads the Texans to the playoffs, and even the Colts with Anthony Richardson and all the stuff with Jonathan Taylor. I no real value in any of those plays, but Jameer Gibbs at plus 1,000 is honestly, it's been my favorite bet. The number hasn't really moved that much. I think it went to plus 900 and then it moved back to plus 1,000. So that's my favorite player prop of the Lions to make this season is Jameer Gibbs plus 1,000 be Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Listen, and that's kind of like my gut feeling as of right now as well. Again, not necessarily speaking from like a money line standpoint, but just looking at and what we've heard how the Lions plan on using Jameer Gibbs. Obviously, yes, he's going to be splitting carries with David Montgomery. But I just think like Josh just going to have more opportunities to have more explosive plays and be able to put up, a more complete stat sheet in comparison to some of these other players that are going to be in the league. And if he's able to do that, if they're able to actually utilize him like Alvin Kamara, well, yeah, you set him up for a really good chance to make that rookie of the year. Okay, so that's one bet. You have another one for us?
Yeah, this is going to be my long odds, but I like it from the sense that Miko, you know that the Brian Branch hype train is not slowing down by any means anytime soon.
Yeah,
Um, it's another rookie of the year bet, but it's Brian Branch for defensive rookie of the year, and it's plus 3,000. Real long odds on that, right? So maybe
hmm
if you want to, and this is from a more maybe kind of how to gamble advice, and it kind of speaks to your question from earlier. It's like, oh, should like how much money would you put on this, and in regards to how much money would you put on that? Maybe you would go if your betting limit was $10, right? Maybe you
sure.
might put $10 on Jameer Gibbs, but you'll sprinkle $5 on Brian Branch. But at plus 3,000 odds, if that hits, you're more than making up the money that you spent on putting money on Jameer Gibbs if he doesn't end up winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. So um, again, I just think it's incredible value. Everything we've heard about the kid. Miko, he played 16 snaps in the preseason, and they said, that's good. That's it. We're good on that. We don't need to see any more. Brad Holmes saw the hit that he made and said, yeah, he's been doing that in camp all day, every day. We're just going to put this guy on the shelf with the rest of the defensive starters because he's going to be the Lions starting nickel cornerback on day one when they play the Chiefs on Thursday in Arrowhead.
And again, I think Brian Branch finds himself in a very similar situation as Jameer Gibbs, right? Where he's gonna be on the field plenty and he does enough different things to where you kind of feel like, hey, if he's able to stuff the stat sheet at the end of the year, if Brian Branch comes away with like 3 picks, 4 sacks, a couple forced fumbles, and a lot of like PBUs, it's almost like he's going to be in the mix. I don't think he necessarily has to have these ridiculous, stat lines. You look at, Sauce won the award last year and Hutch had more picks than he did. So it's
That's
not
right.
necessarily like stat driven, or at least it's been shown that it doesn't have to be stat driven. But Brian Branch could be that guy for the Lions who just puts up enough stats and enough columns to where the league is like, yeah, that's your defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's my kind of long odds one. To find one that kind of strikes the balance right in the middle, for nearly the same odds as you would get for a hand of blackjack, right near even money. Miko, you might get into sports betting after I give you this one, but It's a NFL season player market bet. It's for a quarterback to have 4,000 plus regular season passing yards. Jared Goff is at minus 105. So real close to, like I said, a hand of blackjack. You can get the same odds for Jared Goff to throw for 4,000 yards. Miko, is there a way that Jared Goff does not throw for 4,000 yards in a 17-game regular season?
It doesn't feel like in this day and age, right? Like it almost feels like that's almost a given as long as you have the
Health, right?
quarterback to do it. Yeah, and health. Like that's literally it. And the Lions are going to be bringing out one of the best offensive lines, so you feel pretty good about the health aspect. So I can definitely see why you would highlight that bet in particular.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's a few. Patrick Mahomes is minus 3,500, right? So I mean, that kind of shows you the value between. Yeah, everybody thinks Patty Mahomes is going to do it, but again, the NFL is just such a fickle, nasty creature.
Mhm.
Injuries derail any of these things, right? So that's something also to keep in mind, like we mentioned. But yeah, Patty Mahomes minus 3,500. Kirk Cousins is minus 700. Jared Goff is minus 105. What's
Oh
going
yeah.
on? What's going on?
Yeah. I can definitely see why, yeah, you would definitely call that one out. All right. So to wrap up this video, because we're already well over 20 minutes at this point, can you give me one bet that you would highly recommend that fans make, and one bet that you would basically be like, yo, stay away by all means?
Yeah, if you don't mind me just kind of circling the wagons, I think that the bet that you absolutely should make
Hmm.
is Jahmyr Gibbs offensive rookie of the year at plus 1,000. Like I get it, like the Jared Goff bet is super safe,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's only for minus 105. If you can get Jahmyr Gibbs at offensive rookie of the year for plus 1,000, I mean, you take that all day and yesterday. Get in your time machine and go make that bet twice. The one bet that I would stay away from though is Dan Campbell for Coach of the Year. I think that there's too many factors at play. There's we'll say it right now. Detroit versus everybody. It's the New York media, right? I
Basically,
mean,
right.
yeah, yeah. I mean that is a real tangible thing that you don't really have any control over, and Dan Campbell doesn't have any control over either. So those are the two that I would take, and that would be a little cautious about.
All right. Well, hey guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I appreciate, first of all, Ryan, thank you for coming by, sharing so much knowledge. If you guys found this video not like beneficial, if you found this to be like a really good time, let us know in the comments section below, because if you guys really enjoy this, I might be able to talk Ryan into coming back and be giving you guys weekly advice, and maybe not just on the Lions. Maybe we talk a couple other bets across the league that could really help line your pockets. So let us know in the comment section below. Also, like always, if you're looking for more content on the Detroit Lions, be sure to head over to prideofdetroit.com. And last but not least, if you are new to this channel, if you've never subscribed before, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you can be notified of every time we upload a new video to this channel. Once again, I'm Miko. He's Ryan. Thank you guys for checking us out.